Have you ever met someone who argues with absolute confidence? But the moment you listen carefully, nothing they say actually makes sense. They speak loudly. They sound completely sure of themselves. And even when the facts clearly prove them wrong, they double down. We have all encountered someone like this. At first, most people explain it away as arrogance. Maybe the person is stubborn. Maybe they just have a strong personality. But psychology suggests something more interesting. Certain everyday behaviors can quietly reveal how someone's mind processes information. When researchers study patterns of thinking, they notice that people with lower cognitive ability often fall into the same predictable habits. This has very little to do with school grades or formal education. It has everything to do with how someone thinks, questions, and adapts to reality. Today, we are breaking down 7 everyday behaviors that psychologists often associate with lower cognitive processing. And once you start noticing these patterns, you will begin to see them everywhere. 1. The Dunning-Kruger trap. Confidence without competence. The first and most obvious habit is extreme confidence without real understanding. Psychologists call this the Dunning-Kruger Effect, first described by researchers David Dunning and Justin Kruger at Cornell University. It occurs when people with low ability dramatically overestimate their own competence. In simple terms, they are too uninformed to realize how uninformed they actually are. You can often see this in everyday situations. Someone reads a single article about nutrition and suddenly believes they know more than doctors. They watch one short video about economics and start lecturing everyone about how the global financial system works. They skim a few headlines about psychology and confidently diagnose everyone around them. The louder their confidence becomes, the more obvious the gap between knowledge and certainty appears. Ironically, highly intelligent people tend to do the opposite. The more they learn, the more aware they become of how much they still don't know. 2. The death of curiosity. Another powerful signal is a lack of curiosity. Curiosity is one of the strongest drivers of intelligence. It pushes people to explore new ideas, ask questions, and challenge their own assumptions. But people with lower cognitive flexibility often avoid curiosity altogether. Instead of asking questions, they shut down conversations. For example, when someone introduces a new idea, they respond with, "That's stupid. That makes no sense. Why would anyone care about that?" If a discussion becomes complex, they quickly lose interest. Imagine explaining something unfamiliar to them, like artificial intelligence or climate science. Within seconds, they may interrupt with, "Whatever, it's all nonsense anyway." This reaction is not just boredom. Learning new ideas requires admitting you might not understand something yet. And for people who tie their identity to always being right, that moment feels threatening. So, curiosity disappears. 3. Black and white thinking. A third pattern psychologists often observe is cognitive rigidity. People with strong analytical thinking are comfortable with complexity. They understand that reality often exists in shades of gray. But lower cognitive processing tends to simplify everything into extremes. Something is either completely true or completely false. A person is either entirely good or entirely bad. An idea is either perfect or completely worthless. You can see this in everyday conversations. If someone disagrees with them politically, that person instantly becomes evil. If one piece of information turns out to be wrong, they declare the entire topic fake. For example, if a scientist revises a study, they might say, "See, science is all lies." If one news article contains an error, they conclude, "All media is fake." Nuance disappears. Complexity collapses into simple labels that require very little mental effort to maintain. 4. Emotional reactivity. Another common indicator is poor emotional regulation. Research in psychology has shown that cognitive ability and emotional intelligence are often linked. Higher cognitive processing allows a person to pause before reacting. Lower processing often removes that pause. Instead of thinking, people react immediately. You might notice this in simple situations. Someone receives mild criticism at work and instantly explodes in anger. A small disagreement in a conversation turns into a shouting match. a harmless joke becomes a personal insult. There's no moment of reflection between stimulus and reaction. In contrast, more emotionally intelligent individuals pause. They process what happened, then they choose how to respond. That short moment of reflection can completely change the outcome of a situation. Without it, emotion drives behavior. 5. The blame loop. Another behavior psychologists frequently observe is an external locus of control. This means a person believes their life is controlled entirely by outside forces rather than their own decisions. You can often see this pattern repeating across different areas of life. When they fail an exam, they blame the teacher. When they lose a job, they blame their boss. When a relationship ends, they blame their partner. Nothing is ever connected to their own actions. Even small daily events follow the same pattern. If they arrive late, it is traffic's fault. If they forget something, it is someone else's fault for distracting them. If a plan fails, it is always bad luck. Because responsibility never enters the picture, improvement never happens. The same mistakes repeat again and again. 6. Disagreement feels like an attack. People with strong reasoning skills often enjoy debate. They see disagreement as an opportunity to test ideas, but individuals with lower cognitive flexibility often interpret disagreement as disrespect. You might notice this when a conversation becomes challenging. Instead of responding to the argument, they respond emotionally. For example, you question a claim they made and they immediately say, "So you think you're smarter than me?" Or they abandon the topic entirely and switch to personal insults. "You're just arrogant. You always think you're right." This is known as an ad hominem reaction, attacking the person instead of addressing the argument. Logical debate requires mental effort and structured thinking. When that effort feels uncomfortable, the mind takes a shortcut. Shut down the conversation. 7. The inability to admit being wrong. The final habit may be the most revealing. People with strong cognitive ability often treat being wrong as valuable feedback. It means they have learned something new. But individuals with lower cognitive awareness experience being wrong as a threat to their identity. So they resist it at all costs. You can observe this in small situations. Someone makes a prediction that clearly fails. Instead of admitting it, they rewrite the story. "That's not what I meant." "You misunderstood me." "I never said that." Even when presented with clear evidence, they double down. The reason is simple. Admitting error requires self-reflection, and self-reflection requires cognitive effort that many people instinctively avoid. So the mind protects itself by denying the mistake. The real message behind these habits. It is important to understand something here. Intelligence is not defined by grades, diplomas, or job titles. It is defined by how a person approaches reality. Do they question their own beliefs? Do they adapt when new information appears? Or do they protect their ego by rejecting anything that challenges their worldview? The most interesting psychological paradox is this. The lower a person's cognitive ability is, the less capable they are of recognizing their own limitations, which means the people most confident in their thinking are often the ones who question it the least. Final thought. The world is complicated. It demands curiosity, flexibility, and the willingness to admit when we are wrong. Intelligence is not about always having the answer. It is about having the courage to change your mind when the evidence demands it. So don't fear being wrong. Fear being certain. Because the moment a mind stops questioning itself is the moment it stops growing. I'll see you in the next one.